At ease. It's your boy Soul Immortal. Man, I got a message from a young lady a few days ago, and she sent me the video between T.I and Nick Cannon talking about why Nick Cannon says he would never get married again, right? And her comments to the video was, why are men running away from manhood? So I watched the video. It was a good video, and I'll be sure to leave a link. But after watching the video, I said, there was no better person besides Nick Cannon to have in that position to answer these questions, in my opinion. And the reason is, one, because he's been married. Because a lot of women who hear men say certain things about relationships, they'll say, oh, well, he hasn't been married before, right? So that was one. Two, I think that he's coming from a position of love for women. He's not the quote unquote angry man that women say. Women say men are angry or whatever. In fact, he was on some hotep stuff. He was on some hotep women are gods type stuff, right? So Nick is coming from a good position as far as his love for women, right? So that's two. And three, I would say that, because Nick is successful. A lot of women say that, oh, well, men don't want to be in relationships like this because they're broke or because this. I'm sure Nick has enough money in the bank to fully take care of one or even two full families, right? But despite this, he still feels a certain way. So after saying all this, why do you think Nick would still say he believes he'll never get married? Let's talk about it. So the brother said three things in this interview that stood out to me, right? And the first two things are this. First, he said relationships are designed to please women, right? And second, he says, I don't want to be responsible for anybody else's happiness. So when you think about it, right? When the brother says relationships are designed to please women, when you think about it, from the moment a man meets a woman, they go through this quote unquote courting stage, right? Where you're taking her out to dinners and movies and concerts. It's the majority about the women. Once a man says, you know what, I want this woman to be in my life forever. Now this man has to go spend, 4.5 months salary on a ring. He has to propose. He has to have this big event, sponsor this wedding, this honeymoon. It's still about the woman, right? And then when you look at a man, trying to have a family and get the home and have his wife in a nice car and all this stuff, even at this point, it's still about the woman. You know what I'm saying? And it kind of rolls over into what he says when the brother says, I don't want to be responsible for anybody else's happiness or really their happiness or their well-being. You know what I'm saying? And you have to think of it like this, right? I think back to my youth, back when I was growing up. The men in that day were different. The men from way back were different because the mindset of a man back then, and I'm talking, from the 70s and earlier, men had the mindset of sacrifice. A man was looked at as being noble when he went without, when he drove an old work truck just to make sure everybody else in the family was shining, and the wife drove the new foreign, and they had the big house with the picket fence, 2.5 kids, pet, the whole nine. A man was looked high upon when he went without. But you have to look at things are changing, right? Because, and I can even look at my experience personally. I remember the whole time growing up in my life, my dad always talked about buying a Corvette. I always remember that, from when I was a little boy. I'm getting a Corvette. I want a Corvette. And even though he made more than enough money to get one if he wanted, he never got one. Because in his mind, priority was always the happiness of my mom, and my mom reciprocated, so I'm not saying nothing like that, but his mindset was that of sacrifice, you know what I'm saying? And I guess what Nick Cannon is saying is who signed us up for that? Like why is that? And men have never had a problem with that. That's just the way life has always been. But you have to factor in something. You have to look at, okay, now when women have evolved, right? Women are something else different than they were back in the 70s and prior to that. So knowing that, you have to understand that men are going to evolve too, right? So really what this younger generation of man is saying is, women are good. They have their degrees, they have their homes, they have all this stuff. Like I'm not on a spiritual level or whatever. I'm no longer responsible for their happiness. Like y'all got it now. So you really can't look at a young man coming up in his 20s and 30s. Even if a man is opting out of marriage or relationships completely, even if a man is opting out of having kids, you can't say that man is opting out of manhood because manhood has evolved into something else. You know what I'm saying? There's nothing wrong for men to look at life now and say, you know what? I want to put my own priorities first. Like I want to see what I can achieve in life. I want to win. I want to have things. I want to drive nice cars too. I want to see the world too. There's nothing wrong with that. And when you think about it, I talked to several women, and what I'm starting to see is that this same trend is not just with men, it's with women too. Because I talk to a lot of women, and they'll say, you know what? I have this guy in my life. I love him. I don't want to be with nobody else. But I need my space. Like I don't want to be married to him. I don't want that obligation. I don't want to live with this guy, but I love him. This is just what relationships are coming to. Marriage is still coming now. People are coming together and loving each other and matrimony, the whole whatever. But in the next 10, 20 years, in the next 30 years, marriage is going to be a thing of the past. Marriage is going to be something that people talk about, like what we used to do, and that's the whole game plan. That's been the quote unquote agenda the whole time. When you separate families, you're looking at more real estate, you're looking at more taxes, you're looking at more. So that's been the whole agenda. Now, the third thing that the brother talked about was stress or health, right? And he made this comment. He said, I've never been in a relationship that wasn't stressful. Ever since I've left relationships, I've been out of the hospital. Now that's a bold statement, and it says a lot. And again, I have to go back to my youth, right? Now, when I was young, and men and women were married, it was common for the man to die first. Like it was almost expected. But what makes that normal? What makes that normal for it to be expected for men to die before their wives? That's not normal. But you have to look at it. With men living with all the weight on their shoulders for 20, 30, 40 years, however long people are together or married, that's stressful. That's almost like having two identical cars and you just running one at 100 miles an hour for 20, 30 years, right? Because when you look at it, when a man is, the head of his household, he's responsible for everything. If the cars go bad, if tuition needs paid, if bills are late, he's responsible for all that. So you have to understand that there's a certain a level of stress that comes with that. You know what I'm saying? So really all Nick Cannon is saying is like who signed us up for that? What's going on, man? He's saying who signed us up for that? You know what I'm saying? And that's a bold statement for the brother to say, you know what? Because I think he has lupus or he has some kind of condition. He said, ever since I've opted out of relationships, I've been completely out of the hospital. So again, it just comes down to the evolution of relationships, period. Not just men, not just women. It's the evolution of relationships, period. This is just where we are. We're coming to a point where everybody is just slowly beginning to be responsible for themselves, But like I said earlier, you can't look at the things that he said and say that he's opting out of manhood. You know what I'm saying? It's your boy Soul Immortal, and I'm out.
Eddie!